On September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland from the west. 2 days later, France and Britain declared war on Germany, beginning World War II. On September 17, Soviet troops invaded Poland from the east, under attack from both sides. Poland fell quickly, and by early 1940, Germany and the Soviet Union had divided control over the nation. According to a secret protocol appended to the Non-Aggression Pact, Stalin forces then moved to occupy the Baltic states and defeated a resident Finland Russo-Finnish War. During the 6 months following the invasion of Poland, the lack of action on the part of Germany and the Allies in the West led to talk in news and media of a phony war. At sea, however, the British and German navies faced off in heated battle, and lethal German U-boat submarines struck at merchant shipping bound from Britain, sinking more than 100 vessels in the first 4 months of World War II. Harry S. Truman did the right thing, which was to avenge the victim of Pearl Harbor as well as the other Asian countries. Let's not forget to mention the comfort women who were the most victimized people within the war in the Pacific. The 2 atomic bombs were justifiable on the wide Japan military power needed to end. After the war, Japan was nowhere near like how they were before. Everything changed in Japan, literally everything, and are still the only country to ever get hit by a nuclear bomb in war. The U.S. exterminated more than 200,000 Japanese people, not to mention the ones that got cancer over time and died. Japan took major fall from the bomb dropped to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The nukes are overrated already. Cities like Tokyo were being bombed and destroyed with normal.
Germany, Berlin. Germany should be number 1. The country was divided by the communist East and the capitalist West for over 40 years, and then it reunified. By April 20th, the Soviets began bombing Berlin. They worked their way around the city and had it completely surrounded in a few days. At this point, Hitler began to realize that he was going to lose the battle. He desperately tried to move a German army from Western Germany to Berlin in order to take the city. Once the Soviets entered the city, the fighting became fierce. With the city in ruins and the streets full of rubble, tanks were of little use, and much of the fighting was hand-to-hand and building-to-building. By April 30, the Soviets were approaching the center of the city, and the Germans were running out of ammunition. At this point, Hitler admitted defeat and committed suicide along with his new wife, Eva Braun. The Battle of Berlin resulted in the surrender of the German army and the death of Adolf Hitler by suicide. It was a resounding victory for the Soviet Union and the Allies. The battle took its toll on both sides. However, around 81,000 Soviet Union soldiers were killed and another 280,000 were wounded. Around 92,000 German soldiers were killed, with another 220,000 wounded. The city of Berlin was reduced to rubble, and around 22,000 German civilians were killed. People forget the suffering of the German civilians during the war. They were bombed into oblivion by the Allies and massacred by the Russians. All Germans were deported to Germany after the war ended.
Soviet Union Stalingrad. Russian forces were initially able to slow the German Wehrmacht's advances during a series of brutal skirmishes just north of Stalingrad. Stalin's forces lost more than 200,000 men, but they successfully held off German soldiers. With a firm understanding of Hitler's plans, the Russians had already shipped much of the stores of grain and cattle out of Stalingrad. However, the city's 400,000 plus residents were not evacuated as the Russian leader believed their presence would inspire troops. Within a few days of launching its attack, Germany's Luftwaffe Air Force had rendered the Volga River impossible to shipping and had sunk several Russian commercial vessels in the process. From late August through the end of the assault, the Luftwaffe conducted dozens of airstrikes on the city. The number of civilian casualties is unknown. However, it's believed that tens of thousands were killed and that tens of thousands more were captured and forced into slave labor in camps in Germany. By September, the Luftwaffe essentially had control of the skies over Stalingrad, and the Russians were getting desperate. Workers in the city not involved in war-related weapons production were soon asked to take up fighting, often without firearms of their own. Women were enlisted to the trenches at the front lines. And yet, the Russians continued to suffer heavy losses. By the fall of 1942, Stalingrad was in ruins.
In addition to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan came under increased pressure with the Soviet Union formally declared war on August 8 and invaded Japan, occupied Manchuria in northeast China. With the imperial council deadlocked, Japan emperor broke the tie and decided that his country must surrender. At noon of August 15, the emperor announced Japan's surrender in his first ever radio broadcast. On September 2, World War II ended when U.S. Douglas MacArthur